Super hot, super hot, super hot, super hot, super hot, super hot, super hot.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dave Jackson, and this is Tales from the Backlog, where each week I'm joined by a guest to bring a game out of the backlog, play it, and discuss. This week, I am joined by a new friend of the show, a streamer and one host of No Small Games podcast, and master of the flow of time itself. Welcome to the show, Emily Merritt, aka A Specific Egg.
Hi, Dave. I love that intro. I am now a master of the flow of time itself.
Yeah, please refrain from speeding up and slowing down time during the recording, but otherwise,
no promises.
We know that it's something that you have in your pocket for sure. It's great to have you here. This is going to be a good one. I think we have a cool game to talk about today.
I'm so excited to talk about this game. It's been on my backlog for a while. I'm glad that I get to cross it off the list.
There we go. Today's game is SUPERHOT, which is a puzzle first-person shooter developed and published by SUPERHOT Team for basically everything. It released in 2016, and if the gaming tech was there in 2016 or past that, SUPERHOT's on that. It was even on Stadia, if you can imagine. Rest in peace, Stadia. So, SUPERHOT. If this is your first time listening to the show, first of all, thank you for stopping by. Here's how spoilers work. We are not going to spoil the story of SUPERHOT until the dedicated spoiler section about halfway through the episode. So if you have not played and you don't want to know what happens in the story, please look down in the show notes. There's a timestamp, and until that point, you are safe. You will not be spoiled. So we have our quick pitches for the top of the show for Super. It's like Metal Gear. Every time I say Metal Gear, I have to say Metal Gear like they do in the game. I have to do it for SUPERHOT too. So what is SUPERHOT? I say it is the most innovative shooter I've played in years that is actually a cool puzzle game hiding behind the FPS. Emily, what is the pitch from you?
SUPERHOT is, or I should say, super hot.
Better, yeah, there we go.
Is the closest any of us will ever get to being Neo in the Matrix, and I'm contractually obligated to say is the most innovative shooter that I've played in years.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. I think the Matrix is a great touch point for like what this game makes you feel like. Also, some John Wick comparisons when we get into when you see what you're doing in real time, I get big John Wick vibes, but this came out before John Wick, I think, or around the same time. I don't remember.
What was that movie with James McAvoy too? Was it called Wanted? The one where he bends the bullet?
Ooh, you are getting into an extreme weakness of mine. I don't watch movies very often, so I don't even know who James McAvoy is.
I only watch action movies, so we're in my sweet spot here.
Sweet. We're in your wheelhouse then. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so quick stats before we get into the game itself. I have now played this 2 times. I played it both times on PS4, PS5. It takes about 2.5, 3 hours for a playthrough. And people always ask this, so I'm just going to say this right out front. I do not have VR, so I have not played the VR version, just the regular version of SUPERHOT. Emily, how about you?
So I played on PC. It took me about 3 hours to play. I think it probably would have been closer to the 2 hour side if I hadn't been streaming.
Yeah.
Streaming always adds some time.
Mm-hmm.
I also don't have access to VR, but I would love to try this in VR at some point.
Yeah, it is. It's like one of the most universally beloved VR games. Like everybody who's ever played the VR game like won't shut up about it. And that's like, I say that as a compliment. Like it must be really fucking good because everyone tells me that the VR version's great. So maybe one of these days when I get a hold of a VR, I find one in a trash can somewhere, I'll try SUPERHOT out. So let's talk about how we came to SUPERHOT. You said this has been in your backlog on your wish list to play for a while. How did this come on your radar? What about it appealed to you?
You know, I have no idea when I encountered this game. It might have been around when it came out in 2016. It might have been closer to 2020. It's one of those games that I feel like has been hovering there in my periphery for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Like Dwarf Romantic was kind of in that same category. It's like I see it on Steam all the time, I don't really know exactly what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I did watch a couple of friends stream it on Twitch a couple of years ago, and that's when I got really interested in trying it out. I still had no idea after watching them that there was any story associated with it whatsoever,
Mm-hmm.
but just the gameplay had me really intrigued. And then it had been on my mind a little bit more to play recently because I feel like I'm entering this little FPS renaissance. Now that I'm encountering some indie games that are sort of putting a creative twist on the FPS genre.
Mm-hmm.
So this fit nicely into that little moment that I'm having, my little era.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's what made me want to play this too, that creative twist on a genre that, a lot of people my age basically grew up playing FPS, starting with GoldenEye and then Halo. And it's like the rise of FPS. I mean, the old school Doom people are going to yell at me, but like the rise of FPS into like the most popular fucking thing is like exactly when I was like a late teenager. So like I've grown up playing FPS. It's like video games and FPS are synonymous for a lot of people my age. But then people putting unique spins on it, whether it's going to be like really, really interesting stories or in Superhot's case, a really interesting gameplay gimmick. That's what like hooked me immediately, seeing what the game was, the fact that you can, time moves when you move, etc. And so it becomes this cool little like, inching along strategy game almost. So I bought it pretty much as soon as I got a PS4 back in 2020 or so. And then I played it, very soon after that, like within the first few months I had the PS4. And then it just kind of sat there as like, I have a list, I have a big spreadsheet of all the games coming up and guests and schedule info. And then I have a list of like some short games that would be fun to revisit someday and do an episode on the show. Superhot's just a few hours long. So this was on that list for the last 3+ years of just like, one of these days I'll do a Superhot episode. It's going to be really fun. Just have to find the right time. And then it became the right time because this won a poll on Patreon. So every month I do polls for what games I cover on the show. And this one was submitted by one of the patrons, Jake, aka Zolgeek. So thank you, Jake, for submitting Superhot. And thank you, everyone, for voting for it to come on the show. And I'm especially glad to revisit it because Superhot is fucking great. It is a great video game. The single word, if I like boil down what makes Superhot great, is simplicity. There is no fat on Superhot at all. There's some like extra stuff that you can not go dig around in if you don't want to like dig in the extra videos and artwork, and there's some other little games and stuff that you can play. You don't have to do that stuff. Like the game itself, the gameplay, the visuals, the concept, everything is super simple. It's honed down to like exactly what it needs to be, and then it ends before you get tired of it. Like very few games you'll finish and be like, I really wish this game was longer, and Superhot's one of those games. So it's going to be an interesting one to talk about, like how they, how all these things play together a little bit later in the episode. But for now, it's just a very simple game, no excess, executed really well, awesome game.
I couldn't agree more. My kind of short assessment of it is almost identical. There's nothing superfluous. I think generally, but specifically in the level design, I think it's just so brilliant and boiled down to only the essential elements.
Mm-hmm.
And the gameplay experience is just so tight as a result. I just really love that they like kind of came after this super well-established, very entrenched genre. I agree for so many people. And I think for people older than us too, like FPSs are what they think of when they think of a video game. So to go after such a fundamental genre within games and try to give it a fresh spin is like very brave and bold of them, and they did an amazing job. And I agree. I mean, my main complaint is just that I would have liked more of this game. I actually revisited it like right before recording, and I looked through all the levels. I was like, wow, there's like 34, 35 levels in this game.
Mhm.
I didn't even realize there were so many because I felt like it blew by. I was
Yeah.
like, I need double this.
Yep.
So, it's great.
Yeah. Well, I should also say I haven't played the sequel, Mind Control Delete, and if you're looking for more Superhot, that is more, and it's also longer. I think it's about twice as long-ish. So, yeah, if you're looking for more Superhot, that could be a place to get it for sure in the sequel. And I think they gave the sequel away for free back on, if you owned the game when the sequel came out on PlayStation, they gave the sequel away for free. So anyone listening, or you, if you've had Superhot for a long time, you might sneaky own the sequel. Go check those owned but not installed games. It might be there. So anyway, we have a lot to talk about with Superhot. So let's take a little break. Let's listen to some music. And when we come back, we are going to set up the story.
Super hot. Super hot. Super hot. Super hot. Super hot. Super hot. Super hot.
Superhot begins when you boot up an old computer. It's like an old MS-DOS looking boot up screen, which then leads into a conversation that your character, so you play as a person on a computer, chatting with one of your friends who shares a game that they have. It's a cracked game, a leaked game, and they tell you that you should try it. That game is called SuperHot.exe. So you boot it up, you play the game for a while. Eventually you get to a point in a level where everything kind of like stops working and the game crashes. Your friend sends you a new version of the game, etc., etc. And then I'm not going to say too much about the story right now. This might be a very short kind of like preview of the story, but the game takes a kind of like creepypasta dark turn. And that's, if I'm going to tease with like what kind of story this is, it is a creepypasta. If you're familiar with any kind of, one of those involved with, software or a game or something like that. So what did you think? Like, obviously not saying what happens, but was this an entertaining thing to kind of like, you get breaks in between the levels from time to time. It will pull you out, put you back in this messaging screen or something like that. How was that aspect of the game?
So I went into it having watched portions of the game streamed by friends and still having no idea that this was a facet of this game. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be a little bit of a hater here. I love this game. The story did not hit for me at all. I actually think I would have maybe enjoyed the game experience overall more without the story. I do like the kind of tie-in or the analogy of like creepypasta, because I feel like just like an urban legend, any little bit that you start to poke into around, like if you start to like look for logic or details here, it starts to fall apart really fast. So you mentioned like you boot up an old computer. I just assumed it was the character's computer, but now that you say that, maybe it was a random computer that they found and salvaged. And then when you mentioned that they were a friend, I was like, when I was playing, I didn't think this was potentially a friend. I thought maybe you were just talking on a chat room with a stranger. So there's a lot of unexplained elements from the very beginning before anything starts to go haywire. So that's my non-spoiler reaction to what we had happen here.
Yeah, this is one of those episodes where it's hard to like say everything that we mean to say before we get into the spoiler section, but like I kind of agree with you, and I think it's just as simple as like, this is not my first time with this kind of story, and like with this kind of story, the first time you get it is always going to be the most impactful. I think that you bring up a good point, which I agree with, which is if you start to think too hard about the story, then things either like don't make sense, or it's just like, if you start to think too hard, it will start to become more ambiguous than it is on the surface. Like, what is this? What is this? Who is this? Etc. There don't seem to be answers in there from what I saw. I will say there are supplementary things in the game. In the kind of like boot up screen, you unlock like videos that you can watch and art that you can look at and other little games that you can play and stuff like that. And there are little like story things in there too, but I don't think that they add a whole lot. So I've seen some takes out there where they kind of talk about how like this was super impactful to them, like to other people. And I just kind of wonder if this was like the first time you experienced something like this. Like if you haven't played a Daniel Mullins game before, maybe this is going to hit harder than it did for us. And I played this before I played a Daniel Mullins game. I still think that Daniel Mullins games do this thing much better. So it is like kind of, you'll come across something, you'd be like, oh, that's kind of, whoa, what's going on here? And it's like a little thing to just keep you going, I guess. But like the gameplay in this is so good. We'll talk about that soon. The gameplay is so good. I didn't need more motivation to go into the levels and like try and figure out what's going on or something like that. So, if I'm saying, whether I think the story is like great or not, I don't think it's great. It's just kind of like something that's there to add flavor to what you're doing. But with the caveat that if this is your first time with this kind of like meta creepypasta type story, and like that's not a huge spoiler. It starts very early in the game. So if this is your first experience with that kind of thing, it might hit harder than it did for the both of us.
I agree. That's fair. Although this sort of, it is, we'll talk about it more in the spoiler section.
We'll talk about it soon.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the way the game is presented then, because it ties in with the fact that you're playing this leaked, almost feels like you're playing like an early alpha or like a prototype of a game. And it looks like that too. The visuals are super, super simple. All of the environments that you're in are pure white, white, gray, etc. But white environments, basically everything that's not interactable is white. Everything that is interactable, like a gun or a throwable weapon or something, is black. And all of the enemies have this orange-red kind of coloration to them. So everything is super visually distinct. There is no excess in the art design at all. So it does give the feeling that, if you've ever watched prototypes of games, it kind of looks like that, where there's no artistic frills yet because they're trying to make the game work, before they start doing that stuff. That's what these visuals really reminded me of here in SUPERHOT.
I agree. I think it's also really reminiscent of a sandbox environment, which I think is cool because I think generally everything they do on a visual level is just really great visual, design language. They're communicating really effectively with visuals. And I think the fact that you're in this sort of sandboxy type environment immediately communicates that you're kind of playing. You're kind of meant to go in and experiment, try things out, make some mistakes and retry things. So I think they did a great job with that. Also, just from a technical standpoint, it must have been the best way to make sure that this game would play well on VR. Oh,
yeah. Yeah, for sure. Visual clarity was definitely an emphasis too. And like, you can say that, it does tie into the story aspect of SUPERHOT, but from a gameplay aspect too, things get kind of tense, and I can imagine in VR a little bit even more so. You need to make good decisions with how you spend your time and your movement. Time is a resource in this game, so you need to spend it well, and having visual clarity for like, where are the enemies? Where are the things I can interact with? Where are the bullets, etc.? All of those things are like, you'll never be confused about what something is or where something is. It's all so clear that it directly helps the gameplay side of things too.
And you get a little bit of feedback at the beginning about what to do. There's a kind of briefish tutorial in the form of these big motion graphic titles.
Yeah, the big things that kind of flash up on the screen. It's like the computer talking to you in a way.
Right, which I found extremely difficult to actually process while playing the game because I was super close to my monitor, so it was too big to read. But I actually think that you could drop most people who've played a game before. Maybe not somebody who'd never played a game, but I think most gamers, you could drop into this with no tutorial text of any kind, and they would figure out what to do almost immediately. Like the design language is that clear. And the kind of color labeling, orange crystal guy is bad. They're running at me. This isn't good. I know immediately what's going on. I think that they actually did some interesting work with the models of the bad guys too, because everybody's featureless and I mean, no clothes, no hair, nothing distinguishing. But I do think that there are lots of moments where you can kind of interpret their body language, in to kind of understand maybe some emotional experiences they're having,
Hmm.
like fear, hesitation, surprise, that I think you can kind of intuit from what these enemies are experiencing in these moments, which is really interesting. I think has some maybe interesting implications for the story too.
Yeah, it's one of our kind of questions that we'll talk through in the spoiler section is there more going on here than just red glass enemy guys? So that's definitely something to put a pin in for later, for sure. Speaking of the glass, an audio-visual thing that I really love about this is when you kill an enemy, they shatter like glass, and you get a sound effect of glass shattering. And it's really, first of all, it's great from a visual, just a visual flair thing that like, it's very cool when you see them break apart into a million pieces. But oftentimes in Super Hot, you'll need to take a shot and then turn so that that's out of view because you need to do something else while your bullet flies. And then you can hear that shatter to know that you got that enemy. You also hear like gun clicks off to the side. It will let you know like, oh, there might be an enemy behind me because I just heard a gun click back there. So the sound design is really, really great too. If we talk about, this game gives you all of the information that you need and nothing else visually and with, audio design too, because there is no music during levels, maybe some like ambiance or something, but that's it. So simplicity, again, clarity in visual and audio design is perfect for this game.
Yeah, I have honestly nothing more to add. I think even if there had been a little bit more music, I was so locked into the objective of each level that I don't even think I would have noticed. So it's perfect that they didn't add anything more. I agree the directionality of the sound effects too was super helpful and
Yeah.
must just make the experience that much more immersive in VR too.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I was thinking as you were saying that, like if there was music, it might be harder to pick up on some of those sound effects that you need in order to like understand where the enemies are. You get this like red glowy visual effect in a place where an enemy is about to spawn in, but you're not always looking at the place where that is. So having those very subtle sometimes sound effects is really important to know where everything is. So I think the lack of music is a good choice. Aesthetically, maybe a game prototype's not going to have music in it either, right? But also it allows you to understand all the information that you need. Music is superfluous for a game like Superhot. You're not tying emotion into what you're doing really. So like, we don't really need it. And having no music, I think adds a little bit of emphasis to that super hot that you get after you beat the last enemy in every level. As far as the soundtrack goes, there's a song that plays during the credits, but that's it. It's super hot. That's the soundtrack of Super Hot. It's great.
It's great, and you're always listening for it too, because you don't. And this is something that I have in my notes to talk about for gameplay too. But I think it's important to note here that you don't know when you're about to finish a level.
Yeah.
There's nothing visual, no UI elements, nothing to indicate how much progress you've made through a level. And the only way to finish a level is to clear it of these enemies. You don't know when that's going to happen. So you're constantly waiting for that. As every enemy that you kill, assuming you don't see anybody else around you, you're just waiting for that super to start.
Yeah.
So
It's
pretty
great.
brilliant.
There's the the most innovative shooter I've played in years meme surrounding Superhot, that it's there for a reason. But I think the actual meme with Superhot is that voice, the super hot, like that. Every time, I would post in my Discord, hey, I'm going to stream Superhot. I would get people reply, super hot. And then like the chat in the stream, super hot. And that's the enduring meme from Superhot, and it's fantastic. It's so fun. I spent the last week just walking around my house doing it, probably driving my wife crazy, just super hot. And it just worms its way into your head, which maybe another pin for the spoiler section, but it's so simple. There's something weird about the voice that just makes it like just so catchy. It's like having a song stuck in your head.
It is, and it's just a little bit cringe of them to have done it, and I think that's what makes it so charming. Whereas the whole "it's the most innovative shooter that I've played in years" bit, they clearly wanted to make that go viral so bad
Yeah.
that it's like, okay, that's kind of cute, but super hot is so much more fun to riff on.
It's great. Yeah. So whoever decided to put that in the game, my hat goes off to you. It's the best. This game is full of the best ideas, and that's one of them. So let's listen to a bit of the music from Superhot, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about what it's like to play the game.
Super hot. Super hot. Super hot. Super hot. Super hot. Super hot. Super hot.
So Superhot controls like a first-person shooter, a very standard control scheme for the most part. You can walk, you can shoot with the right trigger, you can pick up things with the X button on PlayStation, throw things with circle, and then there is a jump button that you have to use in one level, and then I forgot that you could jump, so I never jumped again. I watched a speed run, and jumping is very good. So I just forgot that you could do it. It's a very powerful move. But the key gameplay gimmick mechanic in Superhot is that if you just stand still, time moves extremely slowly, bullet time, basically. When you move, the game will then move however fast you're moving. So if you run, the game will go very quickly. Everything will move very quickly. Bullets will fly very quickly. If you kind of creep around, the game will move faster than the default, but still very slowly. So you get to control the flow of time based on how fast you're moving. And then actions like shooting your gun, throwing something, those will advance time a little bit by like a set amount as well. So this is the key thing where you get to play the game, you get to play what looks like a regular shooter, but you control the flow of time, which is just, it turns this into a game completely unlike any other shooter out there. Like, you can play this like a regular shooter. That's what speedrunners do. I watched a speed run where someone beat the game in, I think it was like 16 minutes or something like that. And they're just jumping around shooting, in real time for the most part. They take a pause every now and then to like realign their gun or something. But speedrunners, they're not like us, so they just play this game like a regular shooter sometimes. But for the rest of us, that time slowing thing is the move. So you knew this was like a thing before you started playing, but what did you think of it once you actually got your hands on it?
It was as fun, if not more fun, than I thought it was going to be. I think it is a really fun game to watch someone else play too, because I think just like any other puzzle game, when you're watching somebody else play it, you get to sit and think about, well, what would I do in this situation? And I might actually move this way to avoid this thing, or maybe you see something that the person playing didn't notice. So I think it's a great experience for viewers and for players. I think that I expected to go into it feeling a lot more powerful in being able to control time, but the level design is so brilliant and such that there are often people, like you said, behind you showing up. The levels are built so that you have really limited visibility 360, even if you could see in 360, there's lots of obstacles and little nooks and crannies for people to pop out from. And so I spent a lot of time, even though I was controlling time, feeling very vulnerable, very open to attack all the time.
Yeah, everything dies in one hit, basically. Like, the only thing that doesn't is there's some throwable weapons, and then your punches will take 3 hits to kill an enemy. But everything dies in one shot, we'll say, including you. So you are vulnerable because unlike a lot, I mean, you play other shooters, right? You can get shot several times. You're fine. Your health will recharge, or you have healing items or something. In Superhot, you die in one shot. So you are vulnerable. And the encounter design is in such a way, the spawns that come in, because a lot of levels will have enemies there at the beginning, and then when you kill them, more will spawn in. And they always spawn in from like both sides of you or from behind you. So a lot of times when I died in Superhot, it wasn't because there's like 3 enemies in front of me shooting me. It's because there was someone behind me and I didn't know until they shot me. So you do
so
kind
many
of have
jump scares.
Yeah.
Just horrible jump scares. You turn around and there's somebody immediately behind you and you just have enough time to process the fact that they're hitting you. And you're like, oh, shit.
You do have to have your head on a swivel for sure. Yeah. And then if you are the easily surprised type, you could get... Yeah, you're always just kind of taking stock of everything, and you will turn around and sometimes there will be an enemy behind you with a melee weapon like raised and ready to hit you. And you're like, okay, you can stop and let the time flow very slowly and like take stock of the situation and how to best get out of it. But you do need to be very deliberate about what you do. So it turns Superhot into less of a first-person shooter and more of like a puzzle sometimes. There's some levels that feel very much like puzzles with specific solutions. Like there's one in an elevator where there's 3 enemies right around you, and you have to like figure out what order to take them out in based on what weapons they have, what action they're doing right now, stuff like that. But there's also like kind of a sneaky turn-based element to it as well. It's almost like a turn-based shooter where like my jumping out into this hallway and taking a shot is my turn. And then, by doing that, the enemies will get to advance a little bit. And then, I'm going to pop back into this other thing and just like whatever's going on in that hallway that I was just in, I'm going to like move around a little bit and let that kind of play out. I'll listen for that glass shattering, see if that worked out. If it didn't work out, I'll reassess. But it's very, very different because of this one-hit kill, because of the time flowing mechanic. It's completely different from other shooters, even though you're using the same mechanics.
Yeah, I think that it's also a really interesting way to potentially break down your strategy in other shooters. There are obviously some like really essential differences. You have no mini map, so you don't know where your enemies are, the one-hit kill aspect. But in other ways, you're still bound by time, even though you control time in that sort of turn-based way that you're talking about. So I think it's an interesting way to take, like, how might I approach this particular scenario in a regular shooter, but in a more thoughtful, kind of experimental little lab rat way. What are things I could do? What are strategies I could use? And just to continue to try those over and over again, which is really nice because I think for a lot of folks, FPSs are overwhelming because of the speed. Especially if you play competitive, like COD or like, heaven forbid, like Counter-Strike. You don't stand a chance to like be able to sit down and assess a scenario before you get headshotted by some, kid in Poland. And that's just unavoidable. So I love that it's given us this like very unique opportunity to look at how is this moment and these strategies, like how are they built?
Yeah, absolutely. And like part of your strategy can be things that you would never think possible in another shooter, such as like there's an enemy directly in front of me, they're shooting, I'm just going to sidestep their bullet and then shoot them. And you can also, like, if an enemy is running and you want to shoot, you have to like lead them into where you think they'll be in a couple of seconds. So stuff like that can really, like, when it all works out really well. Like, there's one enemy, I think it's the first enemy that has an assault rifle in the game, where they're at the end of like this alleyway and they're shooting this assault rifle at you. And the way that I got through that is they would, you know, pop, 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 pop out in like this spread. And I literally just weaved in between all of the shots and then got up close and punched them, took the assault rifle, and then shot them with it. Like, that kind of stuff makes you feel great, especially because at the end of every level, they show you the real-time replay of the level. And that's when you're like, this is John Wick shit that I'm actually doing here. I just play it in, you know, slow motion, and then it shows it to me as a John Wick scene, basically. Also, you know, you pick up items, you throw them. If you throw in an item at an enemy and hit them, they'll drop their weapon. It'll pop up in the air. You can grab it and then shoot them with it. Like, that's action movie stuff that this game pretty uniquely, like, lets you pull off those kind of action movie maneuvers. And then it plays it all back to you with super hot and lets you watch it. It's really, really, really cool to go through like a level with a bunch of enemies. You got out of a bunch of hairy situations by improvising with whatever's around you. Then you get to watch that replay. It's cool. It's like, it's action movie stuff. It's like you get to, there's a John Wick game and it's nothing like John Wick in my opinion. Whereas this game, this is John Wick.
Oh, hell yeah. There's no replacement for the feeling of disarming somebody, causing them to throw their gun up in the air, catching it, and then shooting them with it.
Yeah.
It's
by the way,
just irreplaceable.
That is something that I've heard is like incredible in VR. Like doing that thing.
Oh,
like punching an enemy, their gun pops up in the air, you literally reach up and grab it and then shoot. Like that's apparently the good stuff in VR. But sorry, I interrupted you there.
No, it's just it's a thing of beauty, honestly. Something that I didn't expect from the combat here is how powerful just throwing anything is. Yeah. That kind of turned out to be the MVP move, except that if it's the only thing around you, you don't have a follow-up action necessarily that's going to be really good. But if you're in a pinch, almost every scenario that I encountered in every level where I was like, ah, shit, I'm cornered. I don't have a lot of options here. The best solution frequently was whatever you have near you, throw it at the like most dangerous, person targeting you, and that will solve the problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they put a lot of stuff in the levels too, like, just depending on where you are, there's always something that you can pick up and throw, even if it's just like a cup or, you know, a glass bottle or something like that. There's always something you can pick up. I remember one level where I got myself in like a really tight situation, and it was just like, there's a TV there or like a computer monitor, and I just like picked it up, threw it. And like you said, it kind of unlocked the entire level after that. It unlocks the entire chain of moves to beat the level just to get one enemy to drop his gun, then I can pick it up. Because time moves so slowly, like you can, let's say there's two enemies on one side, you can throw something at another enemy, it'll stun them for a little while. Even if they don't have a weapon, it'll stun them. And then you can go take care of the other enemy. Then when you turn around, the other one's recovered, it's coming at you. But one-on-one, like hand to hand, you can beat anything. It's not like hard in that way. So it's all about just managing the crowd and managing the situation, which is cool in a game that like gives you time to think things through. Like time moves very slowly. It's still moving. So you can't just sit there forever, but you do have time to sit and assess and then be like, all right, here's my plan. Let's see if this works. And then if you die, you respawn super quickly. It's not not a big deal. You don't have to sit through big long loading screens or anything. So it's just a great like state to be in. And it's a game, I don't know about you, I played this in one sitting. When I replayed it, like, just hard to stop playing.
It is. And I think there's a ton of replay value too. It just feels so good to play.
Yeah.
And I think I love that they've got these different challenges where you have to try to use just certain weapons to beat certain levels and kind of add constraints, or just go back and just try something new or try to do the most ridiculous thing that you can. I like what you said about it. It really is a lot of just crowd control. I think it's also a lot of bullet control. And something that was, I think, surprising to me was that anything can stop a bullet, which is another thing that I think makes throwing things so powerful, is that you can stop a bullet with a bullet, but you can also stop a bullet with like a coffee mug.
Yeah.
And or another gun.
Yeah.
So there was one level where you basically can get a gun immediately. And I was trying to figure out, who do I shoot so that I don't die within 5 seconds? And I ultimately came to the conclusion that I couldn't shoot anybody, but if I threw the gun, the fully loaded gun, that was my ticket to proceed. So there's some surprises to how this all works.
An insane John Wick maneuver too. Like, think about, if you saw that in an action movie or like a Matrix maneuver or something, like someone is shooting and I pick up a coffee mug and knock their bullet out of the air by hitting it with a coffee mug that I throw. Like, that's cool. This game just makes you feel cool with all the stuff that you can do. It's real good. It's also worth noting that the levels have a bunch of, like, every level has a secret to find, which is interesting. I didn't find any. I was very focused on the combat, but I know that every level has a secret place, a secret computer that you can go get like a new story related message on or something like that. What's cool about it is that you get kicked out of a level if you kill all the enemies. So you have to do secret hunting while someone is trying to shoot you in this. So that is almost like playing a different game. It's like playing defensively while this thing chases you around with, Benny Hill music or something like that, while looking for like, some place that I think the secrets are designed in a way where if you're exploring around and be like, I wonder if I can get over there, the answer is like, yeah, you can. And there's a secret over there. I just didn't play that way because I was so focused on the fighting. But you said there's a lot of replay value. There is. Like, if you go through the game and you're comfortable with the scenarios that they put you in, maybe the next level would be like, okay, keep that last enemy alive and go secret hunting while they chase you around.
Have you watched any of the secrets? I watched a video like recap of all of these, which is wild to see. Could not be me.
Yeah.
People finding secrets with all enemies still alive and spawning.
That's crazy. Yeah. I couldn't, and I didn't.
Yeah.
I did watch a video that kind of like, like a story video that incorporated some of those secret things. But I can't. I needed to. I'm here for the gameplay. It's why, we kind of like briefly touched on the story, but like, I think people are here for the way it is to play SUPERHOT. And it's great. It's like, with the idea that they had, and it grew out of a game jam from what I understand. Like, this was an idea that they just made like a little thing, and it turned out to be like, it's just such a perfect idea. They turned it into a game. Again, the game ends before you get tired of it, or before it gets too hard, or before it gets like too complex with new abilities and stuff like that. Like, this game gives you one ability very late in the game, but it doesn't like overcomplicate itself. It just stays true to the original idea, and then it ends. It's just like a perfect little game.
Which, I don't know if we're going to talk about that extra ability now, or if that goes in spoilers or what, because it is very late in the game.
Yeah, we can talk about it now. It's fine.
I actually didn't even need that. There are some levels where I think you have to use it to progress, but I actually didn't feel the need for them to add even that level of complexity to it. In every scenario Should I just say what it is?
Yeah, go ahead.
So you have the ability to sort of port your consciousness into one of the one of the enemies
Yeah,
in the level. You become them, and then the body you were in shatters.
yeah.
And there's a cooldown, so you can't just body bounce, and then kill everybody that way. But I thought it was clever, but I actually kind of preferred not to use it if I had the option not to, because I liked the sort of standard gameplay that you're presented with from the
Mm.
beginning better.
I can see that. Like, it's definitely not required for every level that you have access to it. And it's really powerful. Like, it's an instant kill on the enemy you hot switch into. The bad part is they drop their weapon, which I guess they need to do something to make sure it's not the best, overpowering thing. It's still very powerful, though. I thought the late levels, especially like, there felt like there were a couple of like final exam type levels. Here's a fight in tight spaces, final exam. Here's a, at level with 1 million enemies, final exam. And then there's like the last level, which is very hard. It's so hard that it's the only level with checkpoints to my knowledge. So like, it does get really hard. I did appreciate that ability for sure. But for the most part, I'm having trouble thinking of more than maybe 1 or 2 places where it's like legit required to do it. Otherwise, you can just shoot, just play the game. So it's a cool ability. It's fun to like kind of mix it up in the last third of the game or so. But, they didn't spin anything out of control, which is, a benefit for the game, that they kept things tight, introduce a new thing, see what we can do with it. And then once we start hitting that upper limit, the game's over.
Going back to what you said about it being a game jam game, that actually makes so much sense, because I feel like SUPERHOT is the most game jammy game name for a game to have. I love that. That actually contextualizes a lot of the humor, I think, too, or just the personality of the game.
Yeah, for sure. Just like a quick little thing, we're going to build a game in a week or whatever the rules of that game jam were. And then they were just like, hey, this is actually a really great idea. Let's build it up into a full thing. And then here we are. And there's actually quite a few, even games that I've done on the show here that start with just that simple idea. Let's just make a game for fun. And then they're like, no, this idea is actually worth exploring more. And we end up with the most innovative shooter I've played in years. So was there anything else about the gameplay worth mentioning before we move on here?
I think just my last thought is something that I noticed while streaming this. And it was one of those things that, especially if you've, for you've streamed, anybody who's streamed probably knows that like, a lot of times you're just stream of consciousness talking.
Yeah.
And I just observed at one point that these motion graphic titles that you get as sort of both story elements and sort of tutorial elements, it reminded me a lot of how the titles were used in I'm Your Beast, Strange Scaffolds, I'm Your Beast, as their kind of vehicle for storytelling. All of their cutscenes are told in these big, bold titles with voiceover behind them. As soon as I said that, I started to draw a lot of other connections between SUPERHOT and I'm Your Beast in terms of like the idea of this kind of sandbox environment. You're just trying to eliminate your enemies as efficiently as possible. You're using all the resources within your environment. So it all started to like really stack. I guess it made me realize how influential I think SUPERHOT has been for indie shooters, which I'm kind of getting back into. Like I really love the Borderlands franchise and some other AAA shooters, but I'm now kind of getting more into indie shooters. And it's cool to see your favorite most innovative shooter you've played in years is favorite most innovative shooter they've played in years.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't played I Am Your Beast, but I've seen gameplay of it. I'm like kind of aware of how it works. It seems like there's like a little group of games like I Am Your Beast and SUPERHOT and Hotline Miami that all kind of have like the same kind of, loop to them, we'll say, the same all of those games are strategy games in their own way, figuring out the most efficient way to get through. Hotline Miami is just in real time. So that's very different. And I Am Your Beast is also, I guess, in real time.
Real time. Or if
yeah.
anything sped up, I feel
Yeah.
like it's maybe the converse of Super Hot.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited to play I Am Your Beast someday. I'm going to play El Paso Elsewhere soon. And then, well, Strange Scaffold puts out like 13 games a year, so I'll probably be very behind by the time I get there. But I will. That's definitely on my list for sure. And then hearing that there are like comparisons and perhaps even inspirations for real in there from SuperHot, it's very exciting. I've only ever seen it in What the Golf has a SuperHot level.
Oh yeah.
Where, things work by SuperHot rules. What the Golf starts out as like a normal golf game and then just turns into like, here's a Portal level, here's a SuperHot level, here's a bunch of other like kind of, borrowed, inspired mechanics from other games within golf, which is very cool. But that's the only place where I had like seen actual SuperHot inspiration until you mentioned I Am Your Beast.
Yeah, I don't have any like evidence to back that, but it just it feels like there are too many connections for it to not be at least loosely based on SuperHot. And it just also gives that same experience of feeling like you're Jason Bourne or John Wick. Like it's just it feels good.
Yeah. I think that's like the way to wrap up the gameplay section here is that like you kind of feel like a supercomputer going through these levels, figuring out what the best strategy to take down these enemies are. Okay, I'm going to throw this at that enemy. He's going to drop his gun, so he'll be occupied for 10 seconds or so, because when they drop their gun, they'll go back and try and pick it up and stuff like that. And then I'll shoot these other enemies. We forgot to say guns don't have much ammo. I think the pistol has like 3 bullets in it or something. So I'll shoot these enemies, I'll run out of ammo, I'll throw my gun at someone to get them to drop their gun, I'll pick it up, and you go through like this cool sequence of actions to get through the level, and then you get to watch that badass replay of all the cool action movie stuff that you just did. And I struggle to think of another game with like an idea as perfect as SuperHot's gameplay, but also the execution of it is so, I don't have any critiques for the gameplay in SuperHot. It's a perfect game as far as that goes. They had the idea, they executed it, they stopped before it got old. It's just wonderful to play.
It is. I'm so glad they made a sequel because I would be genuinely upset right now if I thought that I couldn't play more.
Yeah. I should get into it for sure. And it has more story stuff if you're into the stories. So yeah.
Super hot. Super hot. Super hot. Super hot. Super hot. Super hot. Super hot.
All right. So we've kind of like given our thoughts about what it's like to play and kind of our thoughts in summation about SuperHot. So what kind of person would you recommend play this game?
I would genuinely recommend this to somebody who wasn't sure if they liked first-person shooters or hadn't had a lot of experience, because I think it is a really approachable introduction to just the mechanics of moving around, aiming and shooting in a semi-safe environment where you have a little bit more control over the lay of the land. Or I would say to people like me who do, who have played AAA first-person shooters, who maybe have their favorite franchises, but who feel like overall that landscape's gotten a little stale and they want something new and fresh to reignite that love.
It's interesting. I don't do a lot of first-person shooters on the show here. It's not a genre that I like find myself wishing to play most of the time. And I'm not like against it. At this point, if you won't play first-person shooters, you just close yourself off to so many games in the first place. But when I think about my favorites, I did Titanfall 2 on the podcast last year, I think. That's another one where it brings like really awesome movement into the equation. So it's not just like a standard shooter and like cool, unique one-off gameplay mechanics and stuff. Like if you haven't played Titanfall 2, that's just an incredible game. But I guess I am, like you said, kind of looking for those creative twists on it. Like I'm not morally opposed. Actually, I am kind of morally opposed, but I'm not opposed to playing a Call of Duty. But it's just like, it doesn't have much to offer for me and what I want out of games, I don't think. There's some that supposedly have good stories and I don't know. But anyway, I'm looking for the creative twists, and Superhot is as creative a twist as we've ever seen in first-person shooters. So it's really great for people who might be tired of that. You know, if you played a ton of Overwatch or you played a lot of Call of Duty, or if you played Titanfall 2 and you want more creative ones, it's very different, but it will give you that new experience. And, you know, I like to think that a lot of people at this point, if you were interested, have played Superhot, but I mean, you're here, this is your first time playing it. So, more people surely would be in your situation. And, it's just such a good game, such a good idea, such a good execution. And like when we recommend games, one of the questions we always ask is how long is it, right? Okay, you have this cool game for me. Is it 90 hours long? Superhot's 2.5 hours. Like very easy to recommend this game to basically everybody.
And it's basically always on sale.
Yeah, yeah.
Except for the week I bought it. I bought it on Humble Bundle though. In the end, it was on sale. So
there we go. Yeah. Yeah, it has been out for a while, so you can get it cheap as well.
Yeah.
So, hearty recommendations for Superhot from the both of us. So, before we get into spoilers, we'll do our customary housekeeping here. And we always start by talking about the things that the guest does. So, as I said at the top of the show, Emily streams, but also she is one of the hosts of the No Small Games podcast. And a couple months ago, we had her co-host Kate on the podcast. So it's your turn, Emily. Tell people about No Small Games and your streaming as well and where they can find you.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you for having me on, Dave. So No Small Games is an indie game podcast. We exclusively cover indie games of all shapes and sizes, all genres. Most of our episodes are deep dive reviews where Kate and I get together after playing a game. We discuss the gameplay, the story. We'll have a spoiler section. I'd say very similar format to Tales from the Backlog.
Mm-hmm.
We also now do monthly indie game roundup episodes where we just get to kind of not word vomit. We get to just spill on everything that we've been playing lately, from demos to new releases to backlog items. And so that's just kind of like a fire hose of 10 games all at once in one episode. So you can find us on pretty much any podcasting platform, No Small Games. We're also on nosmallgames.com, and we have review articles, list type articles. And then I stream on Twitch, usually 3 days a week. You can find me at twitch.tv/aspecificegg. And I'm pretty much always playing games for the podcast or other indie games. So if you love indies, you can come find me there. And then I'm all over the internet at A Specific Egg, but I'm most active these days on Blue Sky.
Yeah. Well, the Twitch streams are a good hang, really good vibes in there. So I'm relatively new to coming and hanging out in your streams, but it's always a good time. I always know, it's just going to be a chill place to chat and hang out. So I will recommend that people check you out over there. And then the same thing I said on when Kate was on the show too. No Small Games is, again, a kind of new podcast to me, but I've become a weekly listener and I really appreciate the work that you're doing. Highlighting indie games, like you said, but I cover indie games on this podcast. Most of the things that I cover are like the more popular indie games, like Superhot, for example. Whereas I will routinely see there's a new No Small Games episode about a game I've never heard of, which is something that I really value in people who say, I do indie game stuff. Okay, well, dig into some of that stuff that's not selling 100,000 copies then. And you and Kate do that. So I appreciate that very much.
I'm glad. I'm really glad. We like to say there are no small games, only small game studios. Every
Mhm.
game can have really big impact. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. So people can check out back a couple months now on the No Small Games feed. You'll see an episode with me on there talking about mouthwashing with Emily and Kate. So we haven't recorded it yet, but I know it's going to be great. So just trust me, go check that out. If you want an avenue into No Small Games that involves me, but there's a lot of episodes with a lot of other cool guests, or just, episodes with the two of you. So it's a good show. And again, the Twitch streams are fun. So I will put those links down in the show notes so people can easily find those. And as I'm talking about myself for the next minute or so, you can check out whatever appeals to you. It's going to be something cool that you'll like for sure. So, all right. Well, ways to support this show. If you like it, please consider, if you're listening to the podcast version, leaving a rating and review. If you're watching on YouTube, consider hitting like, leaving a comment, subscribing. All of those things are great because it will help people find the episode and it will help people find the show. So we really want that. I really want that. I think this is worth finding. So please help us out there. Also, you can join the Discord server, which is a lively, friendly community of people who love talking about games, the movies they're watching, the books they're reading, other stuff, sharing pictures of their food that they cook, their pets, etc. We are legitimately a community of people who really love and respect each other in there. We would love to have you join as well. So there's an invite link in the show notes. And then last but not least, if you would like to support the work that I do monetarily, you can do that on Patreon. That is patreon.com/realdavejackson. And one more time, this game is on the show because it won a poll over on Patreon. So if you want to have a little bit of say in what games I do here, Patreon is the place to do that. So with all of that being said, we are going to take a break. And when we come back, it will be full spoiler time for Super Hot.
Super hot. Super hot. Super hot. Super hot.
All right, before we get to spoilers for Super Hot, I would like to say thank you to the patrons who help support the show. As always, big thank you to Chris Nelson, the Top 3 Podcast crew, Zulgeek, Chris Copleen, Eric Guess, Rick Firestone, Nick Fakori, Jill, Soccer, Cupcake, Kyle, Christian S., Matt aka Stormageddon, JD, Doug Leaf, Jason Emery, Brian Skirsha, Jenny E., Marcus O'Neill, Stefan, Drellish, Rob Smith, Rigamort, Silcanet, Ashton Ruby, Levi, John E., and many more. Thank you all for your support. Quick heads up, on the Patreon this month, the Tales from the Way backlog bonus game for $5 patrons is Kirby's Dream Land, which I'm playing for the first time. So if you want to know how I feel about Kirby's Dream Land, you can check out Tales from the Way backlog on Patreon. Once again, that's patreon.com/realdavejackson. And with all of that being said, it's time to go full spoilers for Super Hot.
Super hot. Super hot. Super hot. Super hot.
Okay, we're back, and it's full spoiler time for Super Hot. And as I normally say on the show, the spoiler section will just kind of be a loosely structured conversation. So spoilers about the ending might be coming soon. We're not going to go linearly through the story. That is not what I like to do here, unless we have to. It's weird. On the episode I did with Kate about unpacking, we did just go linearly through that because unpacking kind of asks you to do that. But Super Hot, I'm cool not doing that. So if you do not want to be spoiled about anything in Super Hot, please leave. Go play the game. Come back. It's very good. So let's just kind of talk about that creepypasta angle to it. So this is a haunted game type of story. Whether, and there's lots of stories out there, haunted, computer virus stories, or haunted game that themselves type of stories. I kind of said, this is not my first time playing a game that has exactly that kind of story. I feel like saying the other games that I did would spoil those games. That's like kind of against my whole deal. So I won't say it. I've already said the name Daniel Mullins a couple times in here. He does meta stuff in his games, similar like this. But this was not your first time experiencing this kind of story either. Am I right in assuming that?
Correct. And I think it is a trope in, so much media. There are movies, there are TV shows that
Yeah.
feature this sort of like a haunted VHS tape, haunted
Yeah. The
whatever.
Ring. Yeah.
Right. One game series that I really like, I haven't played it, but I've watched a friend stream it that I think did it phenomenally well. I don't feel like it's spoiling it because it is like that's the whole point of the game, and that you're going into that pretty early on. Is the
Mhm.
Simulacra series,
Oh, okay.
where
Yeah.
you're dealing with kind of a haunted cell phone, and it's almost like found footage kind of
Mm,
style investigation game. But that is
yeah.
that's the whole point of the game.
Yeah. I just think that, like, running through the ones that I've played in my head, I I don't think that any of them are like particularly profound in I don't think this is a profound type of story. I will just say that. So execution can make it more or less entertaining, but like once you've seen that this is an idea that someone has had and made it into a movie, a book, a video game, etc. There's probably a fucking Goosebumps book that I read when I was a kid about something like this. So like I just think that once you've had that experience one time, the next one will not hit you the way that it possibly could, just because the surprise that this is a possibility is gone. And maybe it's just because you read a creepypasta, one of these someday or something like that. So what happens in Superhot is that the game is aware that you're playing it and initially resists you. It doesn't want you to play the game, but what it's actually doing is testing you to see if you are like worthy of joining this kind of like hive mind type of thing that you eventually get into at the end of the game here. So that's kind of the gist of what Superhot is. But you mentioned something earlier. I want to kind of like double back on that, talking about who you're messaging in Superhot. I said that they were a friend. You said that you weren't sure. I think that you could go through this and start to second guess who that person is that you're messaging that gives you the game in the first place. Is it a virus? Is it something else? I have my idea. I have my rationale, but I want to hear what you think first.
So at the beginning of the game, I don't know why my assumption was just this is a chat room sort of situation. You don't necessarily know the person. Maybe you know the username, but it's not
Yeah.
necessarily a friend. I think it was just how they were talking to each other that seemed not super familiar. Um I was also just trying to process the concept of receiving a .exe from someone online and
Yeah.
going, "Sweet, I'm going to run this." Like,
Yeah.
I think that the ultimate outcome of this game is the best case scenario if you run an executable that you got from somebody in like a chat. Don't do that, kids.
Yeah. I think that that's as good an argument as any for this actually being a friend, because if it's just someone from a message board or some random person from a Discord server that you're in, like, here's this EXE, run it. It's this cool game. I'm like, fuck no. Like, sometimes I'll chat with indie developers and they'll be like, you want to play this like demo build of my game? And I'm like, yeah, if you put it on Steam, I will. I'm not running shit that people send me. So anyway, that's one reason why I think it's a friend. The other reason is they don't say the words, "It's the most innovative shooter I've played in years." So it feels like it's a real person who has like also just found the game. Because that's where that thing comes from for anyone who's just playing along, who has not played the game. That line, after you have assimilated into this kind of hive mind, the game then instructs you to go out, recruit others with the tagline, leave Steam reviews with the tagline that says, "It's the most innovative shooter I've played in years." So that's like the tell. Because there is that like aspect in the game when you're starting to get like, when the computer's starting to take control over you, I thought it was really funny when you're typing to your friend and the computer overwrites all your messages with super hot. That made me laugh. But it's like, if they were in on the joke, why would you still be talking with them? If they were in on this whole thing.
Well, yeah, I went through that kind of logical thought process too, where I was like, well, if my chat messages are being overwritten, maybe their original chat messages were also
That's
falsified
true.
by
Yeah.
this software. But then at a point, you do wind up with a circumstance where, if that's the case, you have the AI talking to itself, which
Hmm.
just feels too absurd. What's the point?
Yeah. What would be the point in that
But
case?
I think if, like we were talking about earlier, no matter what thread you start to pull on in this story, I think you do wind up with that same question, right? Of like, why the fuck is this happening?
Yeah.
What's the point?
That's kind of the point of urban legends, like you said, or creepypasta, like, or conspiracy theories, right? Like, if you pull too hard, things stop making sense because they're just very surface level. Creepypastas are like shock value stories that will, like, give you they might creep you out. There's definitely some really creepy ones, hence the name, I suppose, but they are not the deepest stories, we'll say. One thing that this game does that I wanted to get your take on is the game will show you that the computer, like the system, it's called the system, I think, is exerting its control over you, the player of Superhot. You, the person in Superhot that's playing the game, and you're controlling that person. Like, there's levels to it, but the game is like controlling you. There's levels where it's like, the only way to progress is to follow the instructions that go up on the screen, like stand still, move forward, et cetera, et cetera. And then after you do that, it says good dog, and then stuff like that. This is something that a lot, like not a lot, but some games will like play with this idea that like you, the player, are not fully in control, or the character that you're playing is not in control, and like kind of touching on that level of like, no, that character is not in control. They're being controlled by a person in the real world with a controller, or maybe something within the world. Superhot's one of those games. So how did you feel about those things where it's like you are, it even says, splashes up on the screen, you are not in control, like that.
This whole thing, it's so, to me, I find it so middle school edgelord coded. Like, oh, I'm being so edgy. Oh, I'm in control of you.
I don't
And
disagree.
yeah, and it's just, it feels really juvenile to me, the way it's executed. And like the good dog thing, I think really, that was the nail in the coffin for me as far as like finding the story likable or interesting. It actually, to me, humanized the computer in not a good way,
uh,
because I think anybody who's actually been like bullied or had like derogatory language thrown at them, especially in like middle school, knows that like people who are really like powerful and strong, not like physically or like whatever, but like emotionally, don't do that kind of thing, right? Like
mm,
that's something, that's a kind of language that really insecure people leverage against each other. And so it's like, why does the computer feel the need to taunt me if it's in control of me? Why do you feel like you have to do that? It doesn't
yeah.
make the computer seem that powerful or infallible or in control in the end. So that kind of lost me. And then the ways in which it does like bake in some meta actions, I guess, that you can't help but take. Like at one point you said like it forces you to quit the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, which is kind of a cool concept, but if the whole premise is like the computer has you trapped inside, essentially like that's where the story leads, is that
Hmm.
you're sort of trapped inside of Superhot, then why is it making you quit the game just to prove that it's in control? Then you have to relaunch it. It sort of again breaks down like the internal logic of like, what's the point? What's Superhot trying to do to you?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. That's my little rant about it. The story felt like it got weaker and weaker as it went to me.
It feels to me like there's like a little bit of like connecting that you can do, or like somewhat interesting questions that can be raised a little bit later. But the story of the computer taking control over you is, like you said, just kind of like it's just like every other creepypasta that you read when you were in middle school or like when you're a teenager or something. I agree with that for sure. It's not, I have seen some takes out there that talk about how deep the story is, and I just do not think that this is a very deep story or an especially new idea. It's just, as opposed to reading about it, you actually do, like the game forces you to go first find your real body in the game, which like this is one of the things that falls apart in my head if you start to think about it. If I'm playing the game, how am I in the real world? If I'm inside of a game, how am I attacking my body in the real world? Like, how does that even happen? If we're controlling people out in the real world, then that might be a little bit different. If this is if it's an Ender's Game situation, I don't know if you've read Ender's Game or watched the movie, but yeah, if it's that kind of situation, then sure. But I didn't get the feeling that that was what was going on, because then you have to like exit the game and stuff like that. Like, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But it puts you in all these situations where it's like, I'm in control of you, I'm controlling your actions. But the way that it does that is by not letting you progress in the game until you do the thing that it says. So it's saying that like we are controlling your body, but there's a line that's like not quite fully crossed in order for that to make sense. BioShock does this too, and the reason it's so famous in BioShock is because they pull it off perfectly. Like in here, it's just a little bit more awkward, I think. I don't want to say too much about BioShock, even though it's like one of the most famous game spoilers of all time. But anyway, it gets into this bad situation, I think, of like, I don't feel like I'm not in control. It's just like, I can't keep going unless I stand still, that the computer is telling me to stand still, or unless I dodge bullets for 20 seconds in this cage, like, you have to do in that one level. I don't feel that like, oh no, I'm in danger, I'm being controlled. I'm like, all right, fine, like I'll stand still so that I can keep playing. I guess that means I wasn't bought into the story. I guess that's what that is saying. Yeah,
it's hard to know what the computer wants, because it's like, well, I want to keep playing. Why are you preventing me from playing? It seems like the computer wants me to keep playing too. So why are we doing this whole song and dance? I also think that every good urban legend has like a couple little details that get you to care about the characters, or at least to find them relatable, but you get almost nothing about the player character in terms of what their life looks like. The tiny snippets of what their life looks like is really fucking sad, to be honest.
It's weird, like their apartment that they live in, and like all these like tubes and huge wires and shit coming out of their apartment. Like, what is happening in that apartment? It doesn't seem like a real place.
No.
Yeah, so
you know nothing about them. They have one friend who seems kind of shitty. They don't seem like a very good friend. So I'm not like really, the stakes feel so low.
Yeah.
In that sense. But at the same time, like we were talking about earlier, the gameplay is so good. I don't want them to spend a lot of time giving me more details about the player character. I don't care. I'm fine with having a completely like player insert character that I know nothing about.
Yeah. If this was, take some action movie franchise and just turn it into that, like with this same gameplay, like I think that would work. I think that they do the story stuff to give you a break from time to time, and just, they wanted to tell this kind of creepypasta type of story. It's like the first time I played it, I remember being shocked by what was going on, but not affected by what was going on. Like, it's kind of fucked up that you have to shoot yourself in the head at the end of the game. And I think I remember hearing that they had to remove that from the VR version because people thought that like crossed a border that people were not comfortable with. Yeah. Like, it's kind of fucked up that that's what you do at the end. And so I played it and I was like, oh, it's kind of fucked up that you have to shoot yourself in the head. And if you try to shoot yourself in the leg, the computer will say aim for the head. But then like after it was over, I was like, yeah, I wasn't like affected by, I severed my ties to the mortal world and now I live inside this hive mind or something like that. It's a shock value story, which I guess in its essence, that's what a creepypasta or an urban legend is. It's a shock value story. And an urban legend, I think, has more of a connection, like you said, because they're born out of real experiences that people have, and then just it's like a little twist of fiction to them, and then boom, we have a new urban legend. Like it's plausible that something, an urban legend in where I live could happen because it's based around where I live and what things are like here. The world of Superhot, at least what you see, what the fuck even is this world,
Yeah. I can imagine this whole story is probably way more impactful if you're playing the VR version too. I can imagine because you're so much more immersed in it. And I can imagine that moment at the end where you shoot and then I think it goes everything goes to static or goes to the console view or something like that after you shoot yourself. Like if you're playing a game in VR, that would be pretty just pretty fucked up of an experience to have somebody go through. It's even if it's a little campy. So
yeah. So the one kind of like interesting kind of read I think that you can have on this, not to say that that's the only interesting read that anyone could have. It's the one that I kind of was thinking about, is that eventually you go through the game, the computer starts to take control of you. It kind of talks about how like the mind is a computer, the physical body is a distraction, etc. You need to join this hive mind. And the last level is all about hot switching your consciousness into this core, which then you join the hive mind. I had heard, because at the end of that level, after you do that hot switch, you can just like explode heads. Like you aim around, you just instantly explode the enemies. You don't have to shoot, etc. So it feels like it's giving you this like ultimate power. If this is just inside of the game, then who cares? Because you've gotten this ultimate power for what reason, basically. If what you're seeing in the game is real life or later, you can like go to your apartment or whatever. If that's just a visualization of the real world, if it's like a filter over the real world or something like that, and what you do in the game affects things out in the real world, then this might actually be an Ender's Game type situation where all these people you've been killing, and that ties back to something you said way earlier in the episode, where if you think you can read body language or emotion out of the red glass enemies, then these might be something out in the real world. It might be an Ender's Game where you think you're playing a game, but you're actually killing people in real life. That's the read that I would give that would make this more interesting. It's still not affecting to me. It then becomes like a Black Mirror story, or something like that. But that's the kind of like, okay, I want to think about this a little bit. What could this actually be? That makes a little bit more sense to me.
Yeah, I like that take a lot more because then you can start to read into the system's agenda too.
Yeah.
Why is it having me kill these people? It opens up questions about the locations you're in, which we didn't really talk about in like talking about level design, but you are in really like, it's clear what kinds of spaces you're in. You're in office buildings, you're in subway stations, you're in alleyways,
hospitals. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting where you are, but it has no impact on the gameplay until you start to think about, okay, well, if this is the real world, why am I going to all these places? What's going on? I think that opens up interesting questions that don't ever get answered to my knowledge. I watched a lot of The Secrets, that's sort of secrets on the little consoles that you find, which are not satisfying. I'm glad I didn't take the time to try to find any of those. But yeah, I find that at least like a fun thought experiment to try to think about like, or theorize what's going on.
Yeah. but that's where it ends. You're kind of left to just wonder what it is that's actually going on here. And like, okay, so if these are real people, if I just killed my physical body, how am I affecting things in the real world? Is my consciousness being ported into a robot or something like what's going on? But it doesn't say that. And it's kind of like you said, it's better, I think, that it's just better left at that surface level to just be like, be kind of neat if that was what's going on. And then if I personally start to think about it more and more, I grow less satisfied with the story. And it might just mean that I don't know enough about the story and I didn't study enough or I didn't dig deep enough. And if that's the case, then I'll own that. But I dug as far deep as I was interested in digging, we'll say. So it just kind of, the way it is with sometimes I always say on the show in the spoiler sections, it's not my job to tell you what the story is. We're here to talk about our experiences with the story. And SUPERHOT just kind of inspires a surface level, like, hey, wouldn't it be neat? Or, hey, this was kind of fucked up type of discussion,
Yeah, I agree. It just really, all of it conjures such a clear picture of some kid I probably knew in middle school, and just that specific sense of humor or desire to shock people. It's like, okay.
Yeah. Did you have any favorite levels now that we brought up the, the varied levels that you're in? Not that it would be like super, I'm thinking about it, like, not that it would be super interesting to talk about like what the challenge was, but just, did you have any favorites that stuck out?
Yeah. I think I really liked the 2 levels where cars come into play or vehicles come into play.
Yeah.
Because I quite literally didn't see it coming when the first time the level initiated.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted more of that kind of thing. I think that was an element that could have been explored more. Like, what if your environment is moving in addition to the enemies and you? So I loved those. I would have loved more of that. I also loved like the elevator one, because I think when they constrain things a little bit more, I found it more interesting to try to figure out like, okay, what are my options here? What can I do to survive?
Yeah, I agree with, because there's the one level that teaches you how to jump. That's the one where the car is coming at you and you have to jump over it. Which is cool. Think about action movie stuff. Jumping over a moving car is great. And then the one where the truck is coming down the alley and you have to like duck out into like a little side alley or something like that to avoid it. Both of those show, like, both of those the car and the truck are moving way faster than anything else, like way faster than an enemy moves. And there's a train level too, where you're on the top of a train and you have to like duck down before you hit an overpass or something, or a tunnel or something, like Looney Tunes style, hitting the top of the train tunnel. Those 3 levels like showcase a different level of speed that I thought was cool, just as a complication to, okay, you think you know how everything works, but those are all pretty early in the game. The levels later in the game tend toward more complicated, bigger spaces, multi-level, like more verticality, more enemy type of challenges. And I think you're right. Like, it could be interesting to introduce more moving parts in the environment that you have to reckon with. It's hard to complain because the game's scope is so small. It feels like they cut everything that wasn't perfect, So it's not like I played this and I was like, these levels are boring. It's like not even close to that. But I agree, like those levels that have little weird complications are interesting. Like there's one late where you start out in a subway car and then the subway stops and you have to get off and go out into the station. I thought that was cool. Basically everything that introduced, the one where you're in the bar, you're sat at the bar.
Oh, that one's fun. Yeah.
And the bartender has a gun pointed at you when the thing starts. Like, if you want to think about this as an action movie, you're starting at the beginning of the action scene, the bar brawl scene, right? And you can pick up pool balls and throw them and stuff like that. Those levels are all really cool. Maybe those are the most memorable ones, the ones that have some kind of interesting complication rather than I'm in a hospital and there's a bunch of guys shooting at me, you know?
Yeah. There's one towards the end. This might be the last level or second to last that I really enjoyed. Took me a while to sort out, but when you load in, you're in sort of an office situation. There's like a big long set of cubicles in front of you. Across the way, there's two guys with guns pointing at you. And then there's two people immediately to either side of you. But the person you're looking at, who's right to your left, is already exploding.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love being introduced to the action while the action is already underway and trying to figure out, well, what the hell is even going on before I actually start, taking my next step.
The last level's like that too. You are the one with the core. It's up above you in front, and there are 4 guys, 2 next to you and then 2 in front of them, and the 2 are shooting the other 2. So it's like, that is another one where I was like, well, okay, there's something a little bit, going on here.
Yeah.
But it's so abstract in SUPERHOT that like, it's hard for me to read into it too much, but it is cool that sometimes, they will shoot each other, and sometimes they'll do that on accident, which always feels great, to have, an enemy that's like behind you, someone shooting from in front of you misses you, but hits the one behind you. That's awesome when that happens. Yeah. Well, anything else about SUPERHOT you want to touch on?
No, it's just a great game. Like, I know I harped a lot on the story, but like, it's only because I found it distracting from the thing that I really loved doing, which was playing the game.
Yeah, for sure. Well, there's endless mode. There's mind control delete if you want more. Mind control delete has a kind of like roguelike structure to it. So it's a little bit different from what I hear, but I think the levels are shorter, less enemies, etc. So maybe a slightly different challenge, a slightly different take on this type of game. But I mean, the SUPERHOT formula for gameplay is just like perfect. So I'm up for slightly different takes on it. I'm interested in, I Am Your Beast and other games that take influence, because this is just like, sometimes you play a game and you're just like, the idea, like the single idea behind the game is so perfect. There was kind of no way they could have fucked this up. Obviously that's not true, but it was an idea that was so good that it had to be out there eventually. So this is an awesome game. This has been an awesome conversation. Emily, I appreciate you coming on the show and talking with me about it.
Thanks so much for having me on. This was delightful, and I'm a big fan of the show as well.
Thank you. I'm a fan of what you are doing as well, streaming, podcasting, and all of that. And I'll give a shout out again for everyone at the end here to check down in the show notes for links to everything that Emily does. Streaming, podcasting on No Small Games, writing on the No Small Games website if you're interested in reading that stuff too. It's good stuff. You'll find something that you will enjoy. So please check that out. And yeah, that's it. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate everyone who's here until the end of the episodes. You are my hero. And tune in next week for the next game to come out of the backlog.
Super hot. 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 Super.
Welcome to No Small Games, the indie gaming recap and review podcast. I'm Kate, also known as Cater Blossom.
And I'm Emily. You might also know me online as The Specific Egg.
And we met streaming and playing video games on Twitch.
At No Small Games, we combine our favorite genres to experience everything the indie game world has to offer and share it with all of you. We believe there are no small games, only small game studios.
Each episode, we'll choose one indie game that we each played separately and discuss our playthrough experience together.
The good, the bad, and our most memorable moments. We'll follow our recap with a review and announcement of which indie game will be featured on our next episode.
We invite you to play each game along with us and would love to hear from you about your playthrough experience.
Hey, Kate.
Hey, Emily.
I hope that No Small Games brings everyone some big fun.
Hello, my name is Aaron. I'm one half of SUPERHOT Saga, a topical variety video game podcast fueled entirely by nostalgia and unleaded gasoline. SUPERHOT Saga, we discuss a different video game topic each and every week. We have new episodes every single Monday covering a different video game topic. More than anything, we want to entertain our listeners and make you feel like you're one of the boys, like you're hanging out at a campfire with some of your best zany caffeine-powered buddies and just talking about your favorite games and all that stuff. Stop on down to SUPERHOT Saga. It's on every podcatcher there is. If it's not, let me know and we'll get on it. Again, SUPERHOT Saga, stop on by.